Hello, today is Wednesday, January 28th, and welcome to episode 550 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Jessica Jones, and I'm joined by some favorite guests today. We've got Advisory Board Member Les Munson and Senior Fellows Morgan Vigna, Andrew Breen, and Amy Mitchell. It's actually a fuller house than normal, so you're welcome, Fault Lines audience. You get even more expertise today. This week, we are talking about a document that came out last week, and that's the National Defense Strategy that was put out by the Department of War late on Friday afternoon. This is the Pentagon's core document for how the U.S. plans to deter adversaries and prepare for conflict. It comes on the heels of the National Security Strategy, which came out in December, and that's put out by the White House. So what happened in the National Defense Strategy? What did it cover? It kind of rescoped some of the priorities. If you heard either our podcast on the National Security Strategy or read it, you wouldn't be too surprised at what you found in the NDS. The Western Hemisphere is a core security concern. It's tied to Homeland Defense. It takes a first spot in multiple parts of the document, really front and center. Deterring China is now focused on deterrence through strength, not confrontation. We see words like deconflictation and de-escalation tied to China. And we see a lot of talk about burden sharing with allies and partners, making sure, assuming NATO can take over Europe and manage Russia. I think that the document actually says that our NATO allies are substantially more powerful than Russia. It's not even close. So come on, Europeans. It's just follow that. It also, leaves the Middle East, our regional allies and partners, to take up responsibility for containing Iran and its proxies. And South Korea gets to manage North Korea. I'm sure that's going to be fun. So we've got a lot going on. There's also a fourth pillar, which is about supercharging the defense industrial base also. Okay, so folks, we got a full house here. I'm going to first turn to our special guests, who we don't see too often, to give us their take on the document. So Andrew, in this Brady Bunch screen, you're up. I see you first. So what do you make of the document?
First, I agree. It's not really a huge surprise after the national security strategy, and it does align with a lot of actions we've seen this administration take already. I think the one thing that surprised me was the kind of de-escalation, not confrontation with China language in line of effort 2. I think that has really global implications, and it might actually be meant as recognition that China is the predominant military power that could have peer-to-peer conflict with the United States. And I think there's a recognition in the increase in burden sharing component, in particular when we look at Europe and how the administration is viewing that the European members of NATO need to step up, ramp up their own defense industrial base on a native basis, send their own troops into places like Ukraine. And that the U.S. is likely to, outside of the Western Hemisphere, it certainly appears that the administration wants to view its role similar to absolute resolve. There's some language in the preamble, introductory remarks on the defense strategy, hailing that as kind of a hallmark of how this administration is likely to do business. And I think we can see some of that in the Middle East right now as what's termed an armada is moving toward Iran. And so I think we live in a world now, and this defense strategy lines it up, where the administration is viewing it that sovereignty is conditional. If you are a totalitarian state, you're killing your own people, you're really doing things that are contrary to American economic interests or American interests writ large. And so not surprised by a lot of language, was surprised, I guess, by some of the de-escalatory words around PRC and Communist Party of China.
Yeah, I will just chime in there really quickly. Andrew, I think you make a really good point. And to add on to that, I would say it was actually rumored that the NDS was late because of how China was portrayed. Apparently there were internal discussions within the administration specifically about how to deal with China, and wanted to leave that space open for sort of de-escalation, particularly on the economic side.
Thank you. We'll get back to you, Morgan. But first, we're going to turn to Amy. Amy, Andrew pointed out that there's, an armada heading towards the Middle East. So if this document is both encouraging our allies and partners in regions such as the Middle East to kind of take up the mantle and let the U.S. kind of be the back end support, is that really true if we're actually sending an armada to the Middle East? Are our allies and partners able to do things without us in that way?
Well, I think I would actually pick up on another one of Andrew's points, which is the concept of sovereignty and what we consider to be sovereignty today. And I think we saw that with Greenland. We're seeing it with numerous countries and the new Board of Peace, right? Who is actually going to enforce sovereignty? Because if the US decides no one's kind of country is sovereign anymore or land is sovereign, right? What does that mean? So, to your point, Jess, in going into this Armada discussion, I love how we're using like Middle Ages, kind of Viking language these days in our national security discussions. Um, I think it's really anyone's guess where the United States is going to go next. I mean, Trump is very focused on, I want peace here and I can do it with these surgical strikes, right? But the day will most likely come where something goes disastrously wrong for the United States and there will be massive fallout. So, and then I would say the other key point in the NDS is this is really a pivot, to Andrew and Morgan's point, away from China. And I think that is the biggest takeaway in this NDS.
Okay, Les. So we've got I'll just put surprise, maybe not too much surprise, the pivot away from China and the focus. Do you worry that if we take, the pressure off China, this deconflictation emphasis doesn't turn out too well for the U.S. and our allies in the Indo-Pacific?
I don't know the answer to that question, Jones.
So I'm going to pivot to another point.
I think it was a very intellectual question. I'm not sure what the answer is. I will. Here are my hot takes on the defense strategy. First, I love the problem of simultaneity. Makes me think of quantum physics, spooky action at a distance. I love this idea, and I think it actually is a pretty good point. That some of the strategies of the past have actually pushed Russia and China in the same direction and made them more friendly with each other. And I find it hard to disagree with anything in this strategy. Some of it's a little overwrought and, kind of Trumpy, Hegseth-y. That's fine. Everyone's got to show how lethal they are. Has personally inspired me to do more push-ups, just so everyone knows.
We can't see the difference, Les, just to let you know.
Come on, look at this. Look at these guns. What are you talking about? Everyone should be more lethal. Maybe I shouldn't say that this week. Anyway, I find it hard to disagree with anything in there. I think it's very sensible. I think it does harken back actually to the Nixon administration, and I would throw the word détente out there. Yeah. After we lost in Vietnam, basically,
one could only hope less.
What's that?
We're headed towards the Nixon administration.
This is, trust me, Trump was already Nixonian, and here we are. This is détente for our time. We pivoted back in the 70s away from losing in Vietnam to a détente approach to kind of reorder things, rebuild up, have a new approach. That's what's going on now. That's the smart play, frankly. And I think looking for a way forward with China that's a little more subtle, a little more nuanced, recognizing the threat, and the defense strategy identifies China as a huge problem. To be clear, it's not like they're backing off of identification of challenges here. It's the approach that is more sensible. You combine this with a request for $1.5 trillion in the defense budget, which Congress will probably come close to meeting. That's a very good thing. This is a pretty smart approach when you take all the chyrons and headlines away from it and all the posturing and posing. It's pretty sensible.
Okay, Morgan, is there anything you can disagree on with Les? You're muted, so you have to unmute to begin to disagree.
Thanks. Appreciate that. All right. I agree with the fact that there are no surprises here. The document is proudly populist and partisan. It is in line with the national security strategy. We are seeing a shift from the first administration's compete, deter, win with a prioritization on great power competition, and one to like an America first approach with a homeland and Western Hemispheric priority set, right? Okay, agree with that. What I was surprised about, and I don't know if folks are going to give enough credit to the administration on this, is that Ukraine and the threat of Russia was included. Russia is acknowledged as a threat to U.S. national security interests. I think it's very important that that was in there. With that said, I also really liked the pressure being put on our European partners for a 5% GDP for their GDP committed to defense. I think that is the right approach. That is in line with where we were, 20 years ago or so? Oh, geez, maybe longer. And I think it is important to use that as a consistent benchmark when it comes to collective defense. So I was excited to see that. With that said, though, I think we should definitely take, as you know, my colleagues have said here, that we definitely need to not phase China out of the equation here, that great power competition is still highly relevant, or strategic competition, whatever you want to call it. And not only is Russia a part of that, but so is China, and we should keep a very clear mind and not wear rose-colored glasses or whatever horrible cliche you want to use when it comes to stoking that dragon.
Ooh, okay, 4 expert takes. Thanks, folks. That's a wrap on a kind of semi-thought out DC day, DC Wednesday. Thanks to Collie Crawley, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Friday, January 30th for another episode of Fault Lines, NSI's podcast that gets you smart, fast. We're on YouTube. Check out Amy in Florida there. She claims it's cold there and she's got a fleece on. Folks, she has no idea. It's icy up here, man.
It's 53 degrees in Florida, Jess.
Ooh, 50 degrees.
Iguanas are freezing. Iguanas are falling.
Yeah, Les has to warm up by the fire with that number. We're on YouTube. Check us out there. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.